It's the Real News Network, and I'm Greg Wilbert coming to you from Quito, Ecuador. Saturday evening, an assassination attempt against the life of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro and other high government officials was prevented in the last minute. The attack took place during a celebration of the country's military while Maduro was giving his closing speech. 2 explosions took place during the live broadcast, which then abruptly ended when a military personnel scattered from the blast area. 7 people were said to have been injured. Here's the footage of what was broadcast at the time.
Vamos a apostar por el bien de nuestro país. Ha llegado la hora de la recuperación económica y necesitamos.
Vamos por la derecha. Arriba, mi compadre.
Later, other videos surfaced from people in the crowd, which showed that 2 drones were involved in the attack. One drone ended up being shot in mid-air and exploding. The other drone crashed into a nearby building and caused a fire there. President Maduro quickly blamed the government of Colombia, whose president, Juan Manuel Santos, immediately denied involvement. John Bolton, the US National Security Advisor, also denied involvement, even though Maduro did not accuse the US for a change. Here's what Bolton told Fox News.
Well, I can say unequivocally there was no U.S. government involvement in this at all. Look, it could be a lot of things, from a pretext set up by the Maduro regime itself to something else. He's made accusations accusing the outgoing president of Colombia of responsibility, what he calls the extreme right wing in Venezuela. That means the vast opposition to his authoritarian rule. And he's blamed unnamed financiers in the United States. These are things he's said before. And you have to take them for what they're worth. If the government of Venezuela has hard information that they want to present to us that would show a potential violation of U.S. criminal law, we'll take a serious look at it. But in the meantime, I think what we really should focus on is the corruption and the oppression of the Maduro regime in Venezuela.
Joining me now from Mérida, Venezuela, to discuss the assassination attempt is Paul Dobson. Paul is a writer with the website VenezuelaAnalysis.com. Also, he is currently involved in the Venezuela Committee of International Solidarity and a number of grassroots collectives ranging from communicational projects to ecological issues, as well as in his Camino Council in Venezuela. Thanks for joining us today, Paul.
My pleasure, Greg.
So before we start, though, I should mention that for full disclosure that I'm married to Venezuela's ambassador to Ecuador. But so regarding my first question, what do we know? What has been confirmed so far as to exactly what happened on Saturday evening? There were Associated Press reports on Saturday that claimed that Caracas firemen said that there was a gas explosion in a nearby apartment and that this wasn't a drone attack. Has the video footage so far debunked that claim, and what do we know about what has happened?
Yes, well, so far, as you explained in the introduction, we have a combination of official announcements from the government, from the Interior Minister and other members of the cabinet, as well as a series of amateur footage of people who were enjoying the spectacle of the military parade, which marked the 81st anniversary of the National Guard. When we combine all of these elements, a fairly clear picture has emerged. This picture is of a series of drones, industrial-sized drones, technically called the DJI M600 drones, which are used more commonly for filming cinema and films. They're used to carrying large cameras and heavy weights. These drones, 2 drones, were downed very close to the presidential stage and exploded. One hit a building and caused a fire, as you pointed out, which was mistaken for a gas leak. And the other one exploded in midair, as the footage shows. No? Very soon after this, about an hour and a half after this attack, a Twitter account used by a right-wing grouping claimed responsibility for this attack. No? This grouping is not a political party, it's an anonymous Twitter account called T-Shirt Soldiers, which was founded in March 2014, claimed that they had sent the drones with C4 explosive with the objective of killing the president. No? This was reinforced shortly afterwards by a statement which was read by Venezuelan journalist Patricia Poleo, who is currently working on a private TV station in Miami, who received a statement from the same grouping, T-shirt soldiers, and read it out without making any comment. The statement read out by Patricia Poleo again claimed responsibility for the activity and elaborated a few political objectives of this grouping, which had tried to assassinate the president. Amongst these objectives were, according to them, the restoration of the constitutional order, new elections, and the formation of a transitional government. They also called Venezuelan people onto the streets, it's a direct quote, for the taking of power. They also, when we look into their political background or their orientation, little is known of who exactly is behind this group of T-shirt soldiers. But when we look at their Twitter account and their other media, we can see that they're a very extreme right-wing grouping, very anti-government, and most likely were created, organized in the 2014 violent street protests which looked to overthrow the democratically elected government at the time.
So, Paul, the government says that it has arrested 6 individuals so far. Is there anything known about who they are or what their connections are?
At the moment, little has been released. The names of the citizens has been released by authorities. Suffice to say, they're not well-known personalities or politicians of any way, shape, or form. They were arrested in the state of Barinas on the highway which basically leads from Caracas to Colombia, one of the major highways out of the country, last night and during the course of Sunday. There are still numerous citizens which the police authorities are searching for. They have published photographs and names of these citizens to help in their search for them. But as yet, little has been declared about either the financing for this campaign, for this attack, the intellectual authors, and so on.
So many analysts, though, that is particularly ones that are critical or opposed to the government, are saying that this attack could have been staged. Actually, that was one of the comments that John Bolton made in order to clamp down on the opposition. What do you make of such claims?
Well, conspiracy theory is always knocking around, no? The evidence, which is what we have to base our evaluation on, I think, points generally in the same direction. Both the video footage from the audiences, the discourse from the government in this case, the statement read out in Miami, and the responsibility claim on the Twitter account all corroborate the same pieces of information. For example, they all corroborate that there was C4 explosive used. They all corroborate there were 2 drones used. They all corroborate what sort of drone was being used, and so on. Now there are, like I explained, there are numerous rumors knocking around of conspiracy theories, but I think we have to focus on the evidence, focus on the fact that a grouping, an anonymous grouping, has tried to kill the president. We still don't know who is behind this grouping, although all signs indicate that it is a ultra-rightist grouping of either civilian or soldier Venezuelans, who have access to finance because the drones cost around $5,000 each, and who are looking to achieve certain political objectives, which at the moment would involve overthrowing the current government.
So contradictorily enough, there's also others who argue that this attack shows the government's weakness. What effect do you think this incident will have on the government's ability to rule, especially in light of the extremely difficult economic situation that the country is going through at the moment with hyperinflation?
Well, as we've seen in the past, and in other parts of the world, we've seen a similar tendency when there is a very obvious threat to the president or to the government, generally people tend to close ranks. Now, this may mean that the pro-government forces in Venezuela close ranks around Maduro in defense of Maduro against this very obvious threat. And one of the worries is that as part of this process of closing ranks, the internal debate which has been going on about how to advance in the country, how to overcome this economic crisis which is going on, might be overlooked. Only a few days ago, there was a fascinating exchange between the government and a series of farmers, poor or medium-sized farmers, who marched to Caracas, marched 435 kilometers to Caracas, to say a few things to the president, which maybe his inner circle might not have said to him, about corruption, about the role of the military in the countryside, and a few other issues. These are pro-government farmers, and this is part of the internal debate which has been going on in recent weeks and months. So one of the worries is that this debate will now be overlooked because of this greater threat, let's say. And I think the government had to be very careful not to crack down on this internal debate, or not to push aside this internal debate, but rather to welcome it and to try to advance forward out of this economic crisis.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point, and that's certainly something we want to keep an eye on for future developments. But we'll have to leave it there for now. I was speaking to Paul Dobson, a writer with VenezuelaAnalysis.com, based in Mérida, Venezuela. Thanks for having joined us today, Paul.
Thank you, Greg.
And thank you for joining the Real News Network.